Hello and welcome back to another episode of Fly Day Fridays, where today we're going to be talking about this little guy, the DM007. It has a bunch of different names, Explorer or DM007 Spy or NightHawk, I believe. There's a bunch of different names for it, and there's names for the white variant of it as well. I think it's like Snow Owl and Ghost and other things like that. Anyway, they're all pretty much the same product, and they are all very, very cool. Now, I received this product a little while back from GearBest in the box that I've got sitting here behind me, and it actually had an adapter taped to the box. It was a European to US adapter, so I was a little bit concerned, but not too much. As I mentioned, it does come in 4 different variants. There is the black version with and without a camera, and a white version with and without a camera. And then once you open the box itself up, you're going to find a manual, you're going to find a European charging cable, in my case at least. There might be a version that has a US charging cable, but mine has only come with the charger that goes straight from the battery to the wall, no USB plugs or anything. It came with 4 spare props, it had a micro SD card reader, and of course you had the controller, which requires 4 AA batteries, and then the DM007 itself. Now inside of the DM007, as I mentioned, I've got the version that has the 2 megapixel camera on it, so in the back there was included a 4 gigabyte micro SD card, although I ended up almost immediately throwing that away because it did not work properly. I tried recording about a half dozen clips to it and it just did not work. It started recording, but it wouldn't actually finish the files out properly, so they couldn't be read by anything. I swapped it out for a 32 gigabyte card, works flawlessly, no problems. There was also a 7.4 volt, 380 milliamp hour battery inside of the device itself. Now taking a look at the quadcopter, it is just an awesome little design. Sleek, black, and very, very solidly built. And basically everything on this, except for the little camera lens itself and the LEDs in the front and the back, is just solid, flat, matte black, which can be kind of a good and kind of a bad thing. It does have prop guards around all of the props, and unfortunately the prop guards cannot be removed because they are actually attached to the motor mount housing. So if you go to try to take one of them off, it pulls the motor out along with it, so there's nothing to actually protect the motor at that point, nothing to keep the motor from falling out. So that's a little bit of a bummer. I have heard of some people snipping these off so you don't have the prop guard anymore, you just have the little motor mount. I'm not actually going to be doing that because it does fly okay with those on. It has these landing gear that those can be taken off as well. I've got the camera on mine, and of course the camera can be taken off as well. You do have to take 2 screws out of the little plate here in order to remove the camera, but it's not really that big of a deal. And with that, I guess we can move on to the flight review. Now, out of the box, this thing didn't fly entirely well because one of the prop guards was actually a little bit bent up, and I can't even tell you at this point which one it was because I gave it a little bit of a bend back and it's just fine at this point. After that little initial issue, everything's been perfectly fine with it. Now, I should mention, this is the first quad that I've had that has a camera attached to it that you're actually supposed to use a camera with. So I'm not really all that good with it at this point, but I found in flying it around in the backyard and when going over to the park and everything, I was able to get some okay footage. It does do 720p video and it does 2 megapixel stills, so you're not going to get really high quality anything. But at certain times, I was able to get very stable footage. I was able to get some decent looking footage. However, the yaw rate, even in low rates, is a little bit fast for doing any sort of panning, so that was a little bit It meant that while I was able to get up there really, really high in the air with it, once I would start to try to pan to do some really nice footage, it would just spin a little bit too fast. And maybe it's just that I'm not good enough at controlling it yet to make it go slowly when I'm turning, or I don't know what. But I was able to get some very nice footage when it was holding still. There was a bit of jello to it, but I think if you put a little piece of foam in here above the camera and below the body, it can deal with some of that jello. I really only saw it in the first few clips that I did. In the later ones I did, it wasn't really all that bad. And with the camera on it and the landing gear on it and everything, I was able to get about, let's say, 5.5 minute flight time, so it wasn't extremely long. When you take the camera off and the landing gear off, it was a little over 6 minutes, right around 6 minutes. So it didn't make a huge amount of difference because with the camera on, I was recording the grand majority of the time. So between 5 and 6 minutes really is about what you're going to get with the battery that comes with it. And with the camera and the landing gear on, it's not sporty as you would expect. It's not terribly fast. It does all right in the wind, but still with this extra added stuff on the bottom, it's not going to do as well in the wind. So I did find when I took the landing gear and the camera off, it did fly so much better. It was actually a lot more sporty then. It's still not anything I would consider a sport quad, so it wasn't extremely fast and it wasn't extremely maneuverable, but it has a decent yaw rate and it does have a decent forward pitch, so it was able to keep going in the wind and it was able to do some decent funnels, and it was a decent amount of fun to fly. Now, one thing I found pretty interesting about this whole thing was the actual controller, the transmitter. And it's just because, again, my lack of experience, but you've got this nice little LED display at the bottom that shows you how much throttle you're giving and how much pitch and roll and everything. So you can see down here on this little display just how much input you're giving it. You can see how much trim you've given it. You can see what mode you're in and your battery and your signal and everything like that. Again, just something where I don't have a whole lot of experience, but it was a very nice little feature to have. And of course this thing does do all of the same kind of flips and rolls that you can expect out of the majority of quadcopters at this point, but it does it in a slightly different way. I'm not sure what it is about it. I'm not sure if it's the motors, because they do this weird little stepping thing instead of actually being able to spin freely whenever they're not running. But when they do a flip, it's like the entire thing goes silent for just a second while it does the flip. So you hit the flip button, you put it in a direction, and it does the flip. And they're not terribly fast or tight or anything, but it's like the entire thing goes silent. I know the motors aren't actually turning off or anything, but it sounds like they are. So it's almost kind of terrifying to do flips with this. And the other really cool thing that I almost forgot to mention about this is that it has a headless mode. With most of the quads that I've used so far, if you push down on the right stick, it puts it into flip mode. However, on this one, the right button on the bumper is the flip mode. And then I pushed this one and by accident, it just started beeping. I didn't know what was going on. And then I noticed whenever I moved it, it was always moving in the same directions, even if I turned the yaw. I've used headless mode a little bit before with other quads, so I was familiar with it. So I tested it out and I took the quad very, very far away from myself. Like I've told you guys before, my depth perception is not great, and this has become a saving grace for me. The range that I've experienced on this is not absolutely amazing, probably 60 to 70 meters, so it's not huge. But I got it out about to the edge of its range. I was about to lose signal on it, and I couldn't tell which way I was facing because there was this horizon and everything and the tree line and everything. So I couldn't see exactly which way I was facing. I couldn't tell when I moved it where it was going. So I hit the headless mode button, I pulled it straight back toward myself, and it just came right back spinning the entire time because I had the yaw turned as well. I thought that was a really cool feature, and it, like I said, has been a lifesaver for me. But all in all, I would say this quadcopter is an excellent investment. The one sort of problem that I've had with it, beyond the initial tiny issues I've had, is these props do tend to come off pretty easily. When I'm pulling on them, I can't get them to come off at all. But if I hit the ground with any amount of force, a lot of times one or more of them will pop off. So because they're black props and the ground is kind of dark, if you're not out there in perfect sunlight, it's going to be kind of hard to find them. I still have all of the original props on here. I haven't had to replace any of them yet, so I've been very lucky so far, but I have come very, very close to losing them a couple of times. But props can be had relatively cheaply online. There is a link to where you can buy them over on GearBest, but all in all, for the price that they have this at, I definitely would recommend it, especially given the fact that out of the box, you have a pretty decent little aerial video platform. It's not anything you're going to be doing professional video with, but it's definitely something that's nice to explore with. And then when you're done doing video mode, you can take off all this bottom section and have a decently sporty little flyer that's very, very cool looking. The one thing I heard it compared to that I really liked was it looks kind of like a Cylon. If you ever watch Battlestar Galactica, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's got that little eye in the front, and the LEDs do look pretty cool. I'm a big fan of that. If this is something you're interested in, I will have a link to where you can find it down in the video description as usual. Thanks again so much to GearBest for sending this out. Thanks to you guys so much for watching, and I will see you again the next time I do a video. Bye guys.